Hello everybody, welcome back to the Robbie Rants YouTube channel. I am your host Robbie Collins, and today is a special one. First of all, it is my 3-year anniversary of making content, so thank you to every single person that's watched over the last 2 years. It's been such a fun journey, and I had to get the shirt and tie out for this guest today. It's a very special one. He is the chairman of the football club I've supported all my life. He's been a lifelong fan. It is Mr. John Needham. John, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, and there's apologies. I should have put a tie on as well, obviously.
No problem. How are you doing today? Good day?
Yeah, good day. Yeah, I was doing Paisley all day today, and just catching up with Keith and various things that are going on around the place. So, yeah, it was a good day, and the traffic wasn't too bad getting back and forward from Edinburgh, so not bad at all.
That's not bad. Thank you, first of all, for taking the time to come on. I want to just ask you some sort of general questions. First of all, how did you actually become a St Mirren fan? How did you start following the club?
Oh well, that was my dad's fault. So, but I've been a fan, since almost since the time I could walk, and I wasn't allowed to go to games until I was 5. So I used to stand and greet at the window when my dad went away to the football, until he relented and took me along, and then that's that. Well, the rest is history. That was the first season we won the old second division way back in 67, 68, I think it was. And yeah, basically I've been a fan ever since. So never leaves you.
Aye, it definitely doesn't. I mean, I'm the same. I came a St Mirren fan through my dad. Growing up, I was gutted I missed 2013 Cup final because I was too young to go to that game. So, aye, I definitely feel you in that respect. What's your earliest moment then watching the club in person? Can you remember your first ever game?
I don't, to be honest, because I was only being just a kid, and we used to stand in the old enclosure at Love Street, and I used to eat my body weight in McCowan's caramels and stuff like that, because in those days the catering wasn't as sophisticated as it is nowadays, and it was pretty much penny chews and or a Bovril, that was about it in those days. So I think my first real memory was when they actually wrapped up the second division that year. I do remember that because it was the first time I'd ever been in the main stand. And we went, and I think we beat Berwick Rangers 4-0 or something like that to wrap up the league and also get to 100 goals. So it was quite an event that night.
Pretty good season that must have been. I mean, I
Yeah.
assume you wouldn't be getting the kebab pies and the different pies you get nowadays at the football back
No,
then. But
that's for sure.
who was your sort of hero that season, and did you have a player that you sort of clicked with? These
Oh
days
yeah,
it's
yeah. So Peter Kane was the centre forward, and he scored a lot of goals. I don't know exactly how many that year, but he was the main guy up front. So yeah, he was that kind of natural guy to aspire to be. But I was never any good at football, so and probably that's why I ended up on the board.
I mean, it is interesting. You always when you're walking around the club and you always see the old pictures with old players. And I think the one thing I love, John, is the old kit. I feel like the kits back then just used to be a million times better than some of them are now. I mean, some of your kits, right enough, over the last couple of years have actually been really, really nice. But back then, I don't know about you, but it just had a sort of different feel to it.
Yeah, I think it wasn't the fashion item that it is nowadays, and a kit used to be 2 or 3 years, before they got changed in those days as well. So yeah, it was a kind of different setup altogether. But I agree with you. There's some absolute classics. When you go around the stadium, we're really lucky to have all the storyboards and everything around the place, and some of the old kits just look fantastic. Some of them look pretty awful, though, I have to say as well. I was
Aye.
never a fan of the bib, for example. That we had in, what was it, 1988. It was a pretty awful strip, and yeah, there's been one or two disasters along the way, but I think Keith and Lindsay have done a brilliant job in the last 4 or 5 years, and we've really had kits that I think universally the fans have liked, which has been great.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one's the black Paisley pattern full kit.
That's
I
what I'm
mean,
calling it.
yeah, I mean, that one is just amazing. When
Yeah.
that came out, I mean, it wasn't just St Mirren fans that were trying to pick that kit up. I feel like that sort of went worldwide. Just
Yeah.
how good it was.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. That's a firm favourite. But I've got a pile of them. I still play five-a-sides on a Saturday, so I get a kit from my daughters every summer for my birthday, and so I've got a pile of them all sitting through in the spare room. Don't like to throw them out.
are you a fan of this season's tour kit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again they're distinctive. I know that my old dad's hates the striped one because he's very traditional in his views, but it's sold really well. We're up about 5% on last year, and last year sold very well as well. So it is a challenge with stripes to come up with something that is a wee bit different but still true to the traditions of the club. And I'm a big fan of having stripes on the back.
Yeah,
I don't like the idea of a big panel with a number on. So I think the last 3 or 4 years have been really, really good. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the additions of the small Paisley patterns going through the stripes as well. It really does bring it out a wee bit on the kit. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking
Yeah.
about the kit, I think one thing that I sort of I'm in two minds about the badge as well. I think the sort of old school badge. I mean, I've got one of I can't remember what year it's from, the zipper, in there that's got the old badge on it, and I absolutely love it. I think the old badge was absolutely amazing, but I love the new badge as well. I think they both work. You sort of get the modern look in the new badge, and that really looks nice on some of the kits as well.
Yeah. It's a pity we can't use the old badge, but unfortunately, it was never kind of properly approved, and we lost the right to have the castellation on the top. That was a problem. But I think it was Jack Patterson, I think, who did the design of the kind of redesign, and did a brilliant job of kind of incorporating all the elements in the new one as well. So yeah, it's definitely. I don't see it. It's not one that we would think about changing. I don't think at all. So
Yeah.
it's very traditional but it has a kind of modern feel to it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, moving on to the game at the weekend, it was another really good result. First of all, I want to talk about John McGlynn because he said some really nice stuff about the club that I, as a fan, and really enjoyed hearing. It's not often you get a manager speaking so highly, but how did you feel about John McGlynn's comments? Because I think he was so open and honest about how good the club's improved over the last couple of years and how he looks up to the club in particular. How nice was it to hear that?
It's really pleasing because we have worked really hard. I mean, I've been on the board now 5 years, and we've worked our socks off to try and keep improving all aspects of the club on and off the park. And so it's nice to hear somebody recognise that. And to be fair, we do get regular compliments from other clubs, of our kind of size. And I mean, people like Motherwell, Kilmarnock, Dundee, all the clubs of our kind of size and with the same sort of history and background have been very complimentary about how we've progressed, and also some of the bigger ones as well. I mean, we get treated very well, by the other clubs. So it's nice to get that bit of recognition, but we're not resting on our laurels. And today conversation was all about how we improve on a whole range of things as well. So we've still got miles we can go and improve. We're obviously restricted a bit by budget and so forth, but there's lots of things we can do to just keep pressing away and getting slightly better all the time. So yeah, it's very pleasing. But Falkirk deserve a lot of praise themselves because they've come back from the wilderness, if you like, and it's taken them a long time to get back, but they've done tremendous work as well. And you could feel a real buzz in the stadium on Saturday. It was nice to see and feel. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. And you look at the display from the North Bank and the work the fans have been putting in as well. It just, I think the word always gets put around. It's such a community, this club. You're looking at the displays. Even for the displays, just the partnership between the players after the game. going up to the fans, Helen Phillips, for example. I know he was absolutely loving it after the game. To the club commentary, you're getting the misery hunters involved who do some absolutely amazing work on comms as well. How good did that result feel, but also just the scenes after the game as well, because it just felt like the club just are so connected right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So it rightly felt like a big result, and that everyone really, was appreciative of that. What you're outlining there, I think, is something we've really been working on, and Keith's really strong on is engaging with all aspects of the club and trying to join everything up so that everybody plays their part and everybody understands where they fit in the bigger picture, and everyone's appreciated for what they do. I think we've got so many people, not just people who are employed by the club, but there's volunteers and the guys that just do a fantastic job keeping the stadium. Our stadium, 16 years old, and it still looks sparkling. I was there today, and the sun was out, and Tommy was out cutting the grass as ever, but the stadium just looks absolutely fantastic, and that a lot of that's down to volunteers who come in and save us a lot of money, but also maintain a much higher standard, I think, than is the norm. So yeah, I think results like Saturday makes you realise how we've progressed. I think because I felt that we did look like a top 6 team going away from home. And we had to obviously absorb a fair bit of pressure in the first half when Falkirk had a lot of the ball. But, we just seemed to get stronger as the game went on. And despite the late goal for Falkirk, I thought it was a really professional performance with the guys. And, the big thing for me this season is when you look at the bench and you see and we've had to swap out defenders and midfielders and forwards in the last few games. We're not weakening the team now when we bring on the guys from the bench. So we've got 16 to 18 players that can just slot in, which is fantastic. And that's been a progressive thing over the last few years, trying to build that squad, because that's the only way you can maintain the success on the park. You can't do it with 12 players or 13 players. You need that 18 to 20 that can just slot in. So it's been a big effort to get to that, but it's great to see it. You're actually looking forward to seeing some of the subs coming on and bringing on fresh legs, but also a slightly different approach to things as well, which is great.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, Dan Dulu came on. He obviously looked very, very good. A perfect example. And when you were talking about, the sort of aspect of volunteers and stuff like that, I always go back to the Aberdeen game at the Miser, during Christmas time. And obviously the snow was absolutely pelting it in Paisley that day. And obviously the volunteers managed to get the game played. It's just wee things like that, John, that as a fan, we just, I think it shows how far the club come, that you can go back maybe a number of years and, the attendances maybe weren't up as much and, there wasn't as many fans in there in the ground, but it just seems like everything right now is clicking for the club and, these sort of moments make it all feel worth it.
Yeah, definitely. The response that day was fabulous, although it did sort of wreck the pitch for quite a few weeks afterwards. But, getting that game on and winning the game, I think rightly everybody who participated or attended felt really proud of it, what the big team effort to get it on and make it happen. So, yeah. And, I think that there is a real strength around the way both fans and staff and players and everyone involved at the club just now. There's a real sense of togetherness, as you've outlined, and who knows what we might be able to achieve. We've done brilliantly to get the 3 top 6s, but we'd love to add a trip to Hampden, potentially a bit of silverware on top of that. That would be the icing on the cake for us. And it's possible. There's no doubt it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like Hearts. I know you were mentioning earlier about the squad size. We don't have, as you quite rightly mentioned, the budget to be having squad sizes of 30 and 31 like a Hearts can have, or Rangers or Celtic. We don't have it, but I think we're starting to see more growth in the sort of depth in the squad. But last season, I spent weeks talking about, you know, how it was going to be such a big summer, losing guys like Caelan down to England, Richard went down to England as well. Olasanya obviously going over to the MLS. I mean, there was so many moves that, you know, any other season you'd probably be, I don't want to say worried, but you maybe be thinking, okay, how are we going to replace the quality of that heightened? You know, they were some really, really good players for us with some big impactful moments. But I think it shows the trust in obviously Robinson as well, who's been, you know, the sort of standout for a couple of years now, that him and the recruitment team are really putting in the hard work, and they can go and identify these players that, as Robinson's quite rightly mentioned, you know, he's not just going to bring in a player for the sake of it. You know, he wants it to make an impact in the team, and it seems like every player's doing their job.
Yeah, definitely. I think the big thing is now we're an attractive location for players, you know, because they can see the success and they can see how Stephen's improved people as well. So, you know, that's been a major factor in, I think, as attracting a better class, a better quality of player. And although we tend to search around looking for guys who've got potential to improve, I think the standard of, you know, the people like this year, you know, Richard King, Miguel, you know, these guys have just come in and slotted into the team and haven't looked as if they've got, you know, a bit of improvement to come up to scratch, if you like. You know, they've really settled in fantastically well, and you know, that's brilliant. It gives me confidence that we can maintain or improve on what we've done in the past.
Yeah, how good's that been as well, that I'm into, you know, the Jamaican market. Obviously, it's a market that I don't think I've explored before that I can remember. But, you know, bringing these guys over, you know, that King, for example, he's had some good international experience with some high caliber players. How good has that been, being able to open up these sort of markets, you know, where maybe clubs aren't looking at right now, and maybe we can take advantage and bring a couple of guys over and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, we do need to be creative, you know, because we can't compete with some clubs that have got bigger budgets. So, you know, that's why we've had to cast the net a bit further. And with every transfer in, there's a degree of risk, whether they'll settle, whether they'll fit into the team, you know, whether they'll be fit enough to play the way Stephen demands as well, as another challenge. But I think Stephen, Martin Foyle before, and John now on the recruitment side, along with Jim Gillespie, I think they do a really good job in evaluating players and checking them out and making sure that they are going to be, you know, able to withstand the rigours of the Scottish Premiership, because it's a tough league physically, so you need a certain type of athlete to be able to compete in the league. And I think, you know, that's been a big change. Mirren used to get bullied, you know, in the early days when we came up in 2017, 2018. You know, we had a lot of good footballers, but maybe much smaller guys and guys who just didn't have the physicality or the pace to be able to really compete. I think now we definitely have that, you know, and we've got that in abundance, which is good.
Yeah.
And the squad size, actually, it's interesting you mentioned that. The squad size is actually pretty good because we've got cover in all positions, which is what you want to have, but we've not got too many people kicking around not being in the squad either, because that can cause, players get disheartened and rightly, are frustrated if they're not in the squad. So I think we've done pretty well in balancing that out as well, and giving Stephen a wee bit more cash to spend where we can, to attract and pay what players are worth,
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, we don't need to go into detail about other clubs in this league, but, you see it online, all the sort of stuff that's going on in other teams, and the sort of maybe disconnect is the right word to describe what's going on at some clubs, but it feels like, Robinson's very open and honest about, he knows he's not got the biggest budget, but what he can do is bring these guys in, like Yosu Olasanya is the perfect example of a player that came in, he maybe lost his way. I think Robinson likes to use that quite a lot about players. He gets sent out on loan, he comes back, and he just looks a completely different player to when he first signed with the club. And I think huge credit does need to go to the coaching team as well. They've made these players that maybe have lost away a bit in the game, but Dan's came in already, made a big impact in the first game he's played, and they make them players that can go on and build a future for themselves.
Yeah, and I think Stephen's great at identifying guys who've shown real promise, but as you say, maybe have flattened off or got had an injury or had a bad experience somewhere, not settled at a club, and their form's dipped. And we've had a lot of success with that kind of player. And that you mentioned Dan. I mean, Bolton paid £250,000 for Dan only a couple of years ago. So there's clearly a player in there, and if he can settle in, he certainly looks to have all the attributes. And he made quite an impact when he came on. It was his pressing and chasing that created the opportunity for the second goal. So that kind of stuff really augurs well. I think he'll provide real competition for Mika and for Jonah up front, and Evan as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you've got a guy finally and Declan John, he's come in at 6 months without a club. But it still baffles me, to be honest, John, that guy went so long without a club, because he's just full of absolute quality, created the second goal. How have you found guys like him? How well, sorry, have you found guys like him? That Robin has been able to identify that there is maybe a bit of a spark in him, because we had a guy like Scott Tanzer at the time who was absolutely amazing. Tanzer's a really, really good player, but Declan John's just come in and really hit the ground running.
Yeah, his delivery's fantastic, as is Scotty's as well. We're really well blessed. Again, that's a good example where no matter which of them plays or which of them comes on as a sub or whatever, you're absolutely confident you've got quality that's going to contribute and create opportunities for the forwards. So and push the way we play with the two wing backs pushed right up. These guys are vital in the in terms of creating pressure for the opposition. Definitely.
Moving into the sort of chairman role, it's been a few years now. How have you found it so far? I know it's a pretty hard thing to try and sum up, but how have you personally found it being the chairman of the club?
I mean, I said at the outset it was a real honour, to be asked to do it, and it remains. I mean, it's been fantastic in the main. There's always moments when you think, oh dear, what we're getting to here, but I would say overall, it has been tremendous. It's been a real eye opener. I mean, I had 40 years working in banking. This is a completely different ball game altogether. If you'll forgive the pun, and yeah, you can apply lots of your experience, but sometimes it's just a different situation altogether. So you have to learn as you go. But I think we've got more effective as a group on the board, over time as well. And I think we work really well as a team. Keith's been a great recruit, running the club day to day as well. And I think for me, it's been a learning experience, but a real pleasure. And there's been so many high points. Qualifying for Europe, getting to go to the games in Iceland and Norway, meeting the president of FIFA and hosting him at the ground. Some of the most memorable victories that day was fabulous when Olasanya scored the late goals. So there's been so many real highlights. The only downside, the kind of regret, is the two semi-finals where we didn't have fans at the two semi-finals, and that was a bit of a nightmare, during the COVID period. But we just need to recreate those opportunities so that they can get along, and hopefully, if we can get a result on Friday, obviously, then we'll be back to Hampden for a semi-final. So I'm excited for this season, and I certainly don't regret becoming the chairman of the club. And my whole family are fans. So my old dad, who's 87, still is very much proud of that. His one of our families leading the club as chair. But I would emphasise, I don't want to try and take undue credit for things. It's a real team effort. Everybody contributes. So I'm just one of a group of people trying to improve the club for the future.
I think that's been probably, from an outsider's perspective, probably the biggest thing that I found. It seems to be whenever something goes well, Robinson rightly gets a lot of credit for it. He is the front guy, he is the manager, he's got us 3 back-to-back top sixes. But it is a real team effort, and I got lucky enough and fortunate enough to go to media for the first time this season, and really experience it from that sort of perspective. And I think just the whole experience was just amazing. Getting the opportunity to do that, getting to go to the stadium a bit earlier, seeing the players come in, seeing Robinson come in, stuff like that. I think it does just seem, even when that's done about it, it just seems like such a welcoming place. You mentioned the FIFA president coming. That was a bit of a weird experience when I found that one out when he was coming. We've had Ronaldo train at the stadium, for the Portugal camp. There's just been so much happening. It is, I suppose, a tough question to sort of try and sum it up, I suppose.
Yeah. But the great thing, probably the best thing, is it's a really happy ship. When you walk in at any time, you just sense that people are enjoying their work, they're enjoying what we're doing, and everybody's kind of on board to what we're doing. And I think that whether it's at the stadium or at Ralston, I'm very confident anyone visiting would feel that. That's how you've got to keep it that way, because people, you don't want people who are, just feel like it's just a job or whatever. You want them to really enjoy it and feel that they want to give more, because we've got such a small team and we ask them to do a lot, and they respond. They're tremendous. So I think we've got really good people throughout the club just now, and it really shows. And anytime I bring a guest, to the boardroom or just to visit and show them around the place, the welcome that people get is tremendous. And that's from the doorknobs at the door who do the greeting and meeting and greeting on a Saturday, right through to first team players. Everyone really seems to be very happy being aboard, and long may that continue.
I spoke to Keith Lasley, I think it was 2021 or 2022, and I was listening to you on a show as well, I think it was 3 years ago, sort of speaking about the ambition for the club, and the sort of goals that you were setting yourselves. And I think you were sort of similar on the community aspect of the club was probably the main thing that you wanted to try and keep improving on and keep getting better at. So 3 years later, do you feel like there's definitely been a lot of progress in that sort of aspect?
Yeah, we've made really big strides in that, and I think that's part of the kind of feel good around the place, because I think people recognise that. So we've made really good strides on the match day experience, and we've got plans for more of that. With the local schools, which was a big gap, and COVID had knocked all that on the head. So we've rejuvenated all that and actually gone further. We've got good partnerships now with all the primary schools, and we've got set-ups at Renfrew High and at Park Mains as well, to look at some of the older young people as well. We've got links with charities, and we're giving people opportunity to experience a game that that don't get it. The Help a Buddie thing's tremendous as well. So there's so many different aspects of it. That I think we are playing a much bigger role in the community than probably ever before, and we can do more. We're hopeful of working more with the council on that type of thing. The Street Stuff programme's another fantastic example. That's been running now 15 years, but that really makes a big difference with a lot of young people who, for whatever reason, they struggle to settle in school and struggle to keep themselves gainfully occupied. So that programme that Stevie Gallagher runs has just been tremendous as well. So all of these things, are really contributing to the club really making Paisley and Renfrewshire a better place as a result, which is really important, because a lot of people are a lot less fortunate than, I guess, certainly me, and I guess yourself as well.
Yeah, I think that is a big point. You know, there was a course I done at St Mirren a couple of years ago. That was the off the bench course with the charitable foundation, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, that was a very, very good course today as well. You know, sort of again the phrase keeps coming up. You know, lost my way a bit. That course sort of gave me a good chance to get a qualification and really learn some stuff that I never really knew before. And that was a really well run course as well. And I think that sort of highlights the work that Gail Brannigan's been doing as well. You know, she's been putting in a lot of fantastic work over the year as well.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have Gail leading the charitable foundation, and I was chatting to her today. You know, they're doing more and more programs and extending the programs that they had as well, and you know they're doing it right across. It's much more diverse than before. So they're doing stuff for menopause, and they're doing stuff for people with memory problems and Alzheimer's, right down to really young kids as well. So pardon me, the work they do is vital and making a big difference. We estimate, I think, can't remember the exact numbers, but I think they're running about 40 or 50 programs, and that's impacting about 800 people a week. Which is just phenomenal. And making a massive difference for folks that need support and help and opportunity to improve their lives. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's been some
I'm
really,
just going to
really good.
stick a light on here. I should have
No,
done it.
yeah, no,
Started
no problem. No, that's fine.
darkness there.
There we go. I think it has been such good work, and you know, I would recommend anybody that you know maybe wants to get involved in that type of thing, go and check it out. You know, there is, as John you said, there's a lot of good courses and stuff that people can get involved in. I think you know one of the big things for me is you know there is that option. You know, the Saint Sleep Out is another big one that gets partaking in yearly. John, I believe you have partaken in it. I think.
I did, and probably the wettest night of the year about 2 years ago. It was incredible. We got soaked, absolutely soaked. But yeah, it was brilliant to do, and you know, the number of people that do these things on a regular basis for the club, is just fantastic. So yeah, I did that, and I helped with the Christmas meals last Christmas Day as well. Went out delivering meals around Paisley as well, which was a brilliant experience, and felt you're doing stuff for other people, but you get the benefit for you is you feel you're really making a contribution to somebody's life, and it was great. The old folks that we were delivering to were just so grateful, not only for the food but for the visit and the chat. These were folk who were on their own and didn't have maybe folk to come and visit them on Christmas Day. So all these initiatives that just really make a difference and build the reputation of the club so much in the local community. And I know people who are fans of other clubs who are very aware of that. The work that we do in Paisley as well. So it spreads beyond our own fan base as well.
Yeah, moving over to sort of the Smizer stuff, as you know, I recently just signed myself up to become a member. I was sort of waiting till I was a bit old enough and, you know, a bit more conscious of the decision I wanted to make. And I think a lot of things sold it for me. But I mean, you're looking at events, John, like the manager Q&A that's coming up next month. Why do you think people, and taking that away for things, why do you think people should sign up for Smizer? Why do you think that should be a decision that people take to try and support the club?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is the stronger Smizer is, the stronger the club will be, because the money will all flow ultimately into the club. So that's budget that we can't raise in other ways. So I think I'm a big believer in fan ownership. I think it helps clubs like ourselves be protected from being passed from one wealthy entrepreneur to another. And there's nothing wrong with, I'm not going to go at any wealthy entrepreneurs, but obviously some of them are very, very good and look after the clubs that they're in charge of really well, others less so. So, it takes away that downside risk. So it means that we'll always be protected from that. And at Smiza, it was great what they did initially to, raise the money to buy the 51% shares of the club from Gordon. And I should say at this point, Gordon did a brilliant job. You hear a lot about Anne Budge having done what she did at Hearts rightly, But Gordon did exactly the same for our club. Basically bought it and sold it onto the fans, and provided a really safe bridge, from sort of private ownership into fan ownership. So yeah, and I think Smizer did a brilliant job initially, but then what we need to do now is, in the same way as Hearts, and the Hearts are a great example of this, they're pumping large amounts of money into their club every season. I think it's about £1.5 million that they get from the foundation there. So being able to raise more money, ours will be smaller scale, I understand that, but if we can get an extra couple of £100,000 into the club every season, we can then invest that in either improving or repairing facilities and so forth around the place. And it helps us maintain a team on the park that everybody can be proud of as well. So the whole thing all meshes together. So we shouldn't wait till there's a crisis to get people to join up. We need people to join up to avoid any issues in the future. And the stronger and more resilient we can make the club, the less likelihood that there is that we can, that we'll fall in hard times in the future. So, my ambition for when I'm no longer the chairman is to look back and say, well, the club was much stronger after I left than when I started. And if that's the case, then I'll be really happy with that. And Smizer membership is a real underpinning for that. And we're about to launch a real push to try and get more members, because the membership hasn't really kept pace with the growth in the fan base. So our fan base for home games now is up by 40 to 50% compared to 4 years ago. But the Smizer membership has just gradually increased. So we need to try and get more people who are not members to sign up going forward. And I think, I don't want to say too much and steal their thunder, but Smizer are working on a package of initiatives that hopefully will make people say, right, okay, now I want to be part of that and I want to contribute, and I can see how it's going to help the club, because I think after the shares were bought, Smizer built up a really healthy cash balance, and I think what we need to do now is, now they've got the balance they want to keep, we need to try and get more money flowing in directly into the club, because although we've done a lot, there's a number of things that, we've got a long list of potential investments we could make to make the match day experience better, to improve the facilities at the club, to improve the facilities at the training ground, that would make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're seeing this sort of growth as well over on the women's side of things. When I spoke to Keith as well, he was sort of mentioning that, he was keeping in close contact with the women's game and, sort of seeing how we improve that. I mean, how big is that for you as well? The women's game has getting big. I know last season, I believe the women's team had a very good season. At points, obviously, we've had a couple of achievements. The women's team got to play at the stadium as well. So how good is it to keep that sort of growth going on that side of things as well?
I think that's really, really important. So it's a good point you raise. The women's game in general has grown, and we want to have a really strong and competitive women's team. I met with Kate not that long ago, just a few weeks ago, and we were talking about the season ahead and what their prospects were, and she's confident that they'll have another really good season. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to get promoted last year, so she's optimistic that they can do that this year. So that would be fantastic. So yeah, we look to help them, both in terms of providing kit and facilities and access to training methods and stuff like that. We share a lot of stuff from the academy and the coaching staff, and we really want the women's team to follow the men's team and get up, to the top level. But it has to be done, because you could throw a lot of money at a women's team, and so we want to do it in a sustainable way, in a way that that it's kind of almost self-financing. At the moment, we're supporting them financially, as do Smizer, but we would like to try and help them increase their own income generating capability and be able to support much better facilities and much better methods and so forth to make them more successful. So yeah, they're really important because there's more and more women attending games as well. So we're very conscious that we need to have a strong women's team and encourage more young girls and women to games.
Yeah, I think one of the other big things that you've seen a lot of improvement on over the years at the club has been the social media aspect. Obviously, that's just generally came more into football and more into life as the years have went on. But the club have made a really good job in Lewis. I know he's done some really good work. I know Alan, photography work is fantastic at games. These guys have done some really good jobs at really painting a picture of what the match day experience is like at the club. Last season the game sort of recap the match day experiences, that went on the YouTube channel, for example, they were a really big success. I know a lot of people like them. So it's just little things like that, John, to me, that just make such a difference in the club.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. I mean, James and Lewis and Alan, do a fantastic job for us, and their output belies the fact there is just two or three of them working on things. It's tremendous what they've managed to achieve in the professionalism of it, and it captures the match day experience, and that it must encourage people who maybe haven't been to a game for a while or whatever to get along and come back to supporting the team. So they do a fantastic job, as I say, with small resource, but they definitely punch above their weight for sure.
Yeah, I just have a random question flung in here. We are slowly approaching the 2027 season, which will be the 150-year anniversary. Now, I don't want to ask what, but is there some big plans being made maybe for that season? I know there's been some sort of talks about it online. A few people are wondering what sort of could be in the work for that big season, because obviously I think Hibs were the most recent one that celebrated their anniversary with obviously their kit that they played in against Dundee United. So is there some big plans on the way?
There definitely are. So there'll be more of that very soon. And that was one of the things we're discussing today. We've been watching the Hibs approach very carefully because they've done a really good job. We do have big plans for it, and we'll be saying a lot more about that in the coming weeks. But I don't want to waste the launch of that. But yeah, watch this space. We definitely have got that in mind, and we've got someone appointed to lead all the activity. We've got legends lined up and so forth to be part of it. We'll be talking about exactly what we're going to deliver very soon. I can't say any more, otherwise I'll start to stray into information that would spoil the impact of the launch. But definitely, in the coming weeks, you'll hear a lot more about that, and I think that'll be fantastic. And it's right that we celebrate that, but also next year's the 100th anniversary of the first cup win in 1926. So that's another thing that will mark, and upcoming. I should plug that we've got the dinner at the Glenhill for the Millennium Champions, because that's 25 years since that's happened as well. So loads of anniversaries coming up in the next wee while.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time. I hope, I don't know if you've seen the BBC cover for Stephen Thompson, but I hope we get some live karaoke sessions, because he certainly likes to sing a few songs. But no, it's glad to hear that there is so much being done in and around the club, to celebrate these things, because you don't want them to go under the radar. You want every moment in our history to be celebrated, rightfully so. Going away back to that first cup win, you mentioned the Millennium, then the 150th anniversary. There's so much coming up. You're right. There's so much to be celebrated as well. John, you mentioned earlier, the transfer market and how good it's been, under Robinson, his recruitment and his team. What about Robinson himself? He obviously got the new contract until 2028. How pleasing was that to be able to give it to a manager? We spoke earlier about players move on all the time. We mentioned Caelan and Richard, by the way, respectfully, gone down to England. That is the next step in their career. That's fair enough. I think a lot of players do make that clear, that they always like to sort of progress in their career, and that's fair enough. But Robinson was one that I'm going to be honest, as a fan, I never expected to get a new contract. I thought the work that he done was just absolutely phenomenal, as rightly pointed out, and I suppose that earned him a new contract, right enough. So how good did that feel on your side of things to give him that?
Yeah, well, we were absolutely delighted. It had been, the discussions had been going on for, a few weeks and months actually. So, for me, it's really a statement of intent from the club, and it's to demonstrate to the fans that we are trying to, sustain the success that we're enjoying just now. And Stephen's very happy at the club, but I think he sees the fact that everybody's pulling out the stops to try and make a difference, and trying to provide him with all the tools that to make the team successful on the park, and everybody really being very positive around what he's trying to do. So I think we were delighted when he agreed to sign it, and also to get Brian tied down as well, because Brian's really settled into that role very well. That when Dermot moved on, you're thinking, who do we replace him with, and can we get someone that works as well with Stephen? But Brian's come in, and I think he really complements Stephen very well. They're different characters, but they've really grown to enjoy working with each other really a lot, and that's great as well. So getting both of them tied up it's an important thing. It doesn't mean to say that somebody can't come in, and if somebody comes in with a fantastic offer to manage a team with a much bigger budget, then realistically we understand that that situation could happen. But given what Stephen's given us in the last 3 years in terms of success, who would begrudge him in the opportunity? But I certainly hope that he stays as long as possible, and and delivers a trophy. And I think that would be his absolute, the pinnacle of his time in Paisley, if he could deliver us a trophy. So maybe this will be the year. Maybe.
I certainly hope so anyway. You mentioned there, I love nothing more than Stephen to have a lifetime contract at the club. He never leaves, but unfortunately that's not how football works. But you spoke about delivering a trophy. Quickly before we start diving into the Kilmarnock game, we've had obviously a European trip, Iceland, and was it Norway? I can never remember.
Yeah, Norway.
Norway. We've had two really good experiences. Unfortunately, I never got to attend both of them, but both the home games were just so unique in their own right. To ask you, if we do end up finishing this season in another European spot, what is your ideal away trip for the club?
Oh, one we can win, to be honest. We were a wee bit unfortunate in drawing Bran, who had a tremendous side, and you saw how well they played when they came to Paisley. So Bran were a top club, and when we went to see their setup, you could see they've been at it a lot longer than us in terms of success, and their facilities and everything were fantastic. So yeah, I mean, I think the key thing is it needs to be somewhere where the fans can get to. There's not much point. If we'd beaten Bran, we would have been going to Kazakhstan, which would have been a nightmare for fans. So somewhere that's reasonably close by, where we can get a massive crowd, as we did in both Iceland and in Norway, and it was just such a joy to see everybody enjoying themselves and having an absolute ball in those two trips. And to see the stadium full for the both home games as well. It's just, that's the kind of stuff that will live with us all for, all of our days, So, yeah, anywhere where we can get plenty of fans there, I think, and with our fans backing us, it's amazing what we can achieve. We've got nearly 2,000 coming on Friday night already, and we fully expect it to go over the 2,000 number. Which should be tremendous at Kilmarnock. So, and with that kind of backing, it's amazing what we can achieve.
Yeah, you mentioned that there. That is, of course, the next big talking point. Kilmarnock on Friday, a real chance to get back to hand, and as you mentioned earlier, last time we went to Kilmarnock with this bigger fan base, we don't need to speak about what happened exactly, but you know exactly what happened in that game. Robinson spoke about it after Falkirk that he wants to make that right. I think the players will probably have that in their minds as well. This, John, for me is a really, really big chance to get back to Hampden now. As a fan, I've been following the club as long as I can remember, and I've personally never got to go to Hampden. The two times during obviously the COVID season, fans weren't able to be there, so I never unfortunately got to go. But I think that is that one thing, as you mentioned, that I feel Robinson, the players and the fans as well would love to have ticked off the list, get a hand and maybe even get a silverware as well. So how big a game is this?
Oh, it's a huge match. I mean, because of the size of the prize, for sure. The League Cup. I mean, realistically, we're like everyone outside Rangers and Celtic. We're unlikely to ever win the league. The top division. So the cups give us the chance for that bit of glory, for those magical memories that are created from time to time, and yeah, it's just it's a real opportunity for us, and I firmly believe that we've got a team capable of not only getting to the semi-final, but potentially beating whoever we were drawn against at Hampden, a neutral situation. Because the last time we won the League Cup, we beat Celtic in the semi-final, and comfortably actually. Although the score was 3-2, it was we were by far the better team on that day. So once you get to Hampden, anything can happen, and I think we've got a team who are built for a cup run, and I know it's been a frustration for Stephen. We kept drawing Celtic away and stuff like that, which is good for the coffers, but it's not. It's your chances of getting through are obviously are much less. So yeah, it'll be a really hard game though. I mean, make no mistake, Kilmarnock are a good side. Kettlewell's a good coach, and they'll fancy their chances as well. So it promises to be a real cracker on Friday night, and it's great to see big numbers going to be heading down the A77 to follow the team. So yeah, fingers crossed. I'm certainly every time I think about it, I get some butterflies. Thinking about Friday night. So I'm hopeful that hopefully we can get a result. Yeah.
I definitely feel, yeah. I mean, you're right. Kettlewell is a fantastic coach. I mean, I really like him. So I've spoke so highly of Kettlewell. After everything unfolded the way it did at Motherwell, then transition back into Kilmarnock. He's been a coach that I've always sort of gave a lot of praise to, because I think he is a fantastic coach. I think the achievements he's done, the things that he's done with a Motherwell team that had some real quality in it as well, I thought was fantastic. So I'm under no illusions that it probably will be a really tough game on Friday. That they have some really good characters. David Watson's obviously a really big standout player. But we have just as good, if not better, characters in our squad as well. It's a real good group of players that fight for everything. I mean, we were speaking about him earlier, Kelly and Philip. That guy would run for days, if you asked him to for you. Just characters like that. Just I think this season more than any, John, it makes me believe that we can go and have a good cup run. You mentioned Celtic away and all this sort of cup stuff that we've been getting the last couple of seasons. That probably is frustrating, but this just feels like the right time.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've probably never been better set up to to take the challenge on. And yeah, I think we've got some real winners in the team. Right from a Goga at the back, and and Shamal's really added something, in on the goalkeeping department as well. So um, I think we've definitely got players who've got experience. We've got real energy and fitness around the team, and no small amount of skill. So I think, yeah, go into it, optimistic about Friday night. You never feel, as a St Mirren fan, you never feel totally confident. But yeah, we don't have a great record down there. But I think the fact we beat them last season, I think gives me much more optimism than it would have been maybe a year ago.
Yeah, I know it'll bite my neck off if I don't ask this. I don't know if you know my co-host on the Buddy's Bench podcast that we do, Ryan. he recently got a Gogic tattoo. I don't know if you've seen this online. I know Gogic thought I know he noticed it. I don't know if you've managed to see it.
Yeah, I did see it online. I saw Goga's comment as well. Yeah, that he really wants to see it himself. So yeah, tremendous.
Aye. I just thought I'd bring that in. I know he'd kill me if I didn't ask the question about it. I mean, it was some commitment. I remember when they told me, I was just looking at him like, what do you mean you're getting a Gogic tattoo? And then I seen it, and it is a really nice job, whoever done the tattoo. I thought he came out absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, because some of these things don't really look like the subject, if you like, but it was very, very true to the image is fantastic. I don't fancy getting a tattoo myself, but anyway, if we win the cup, maybe I'll get one.
I think if we win the cup, all the fans will be building a statue of Robinson outside the stadium for that. But I do think, it was certainly a brave decision, but it did come out good. It did say it was probably the worst $6 pain he's ever went through to get that done, but I think in the end he's probably quite happy with it. John, I've got one more question for you before we go. First of all, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking time out. You're busy, you're a very busy man, so I appreciate you taking time out the week to come on and do this. But to ask you one more question, let's say in 5 years football started taking hints from America and sort of revolutionised the sport a bit. Hypothetically, if we could have a halftime performance at the Smizer from any band or singer, who would you pick and why?
Oh, that's a good one, actually. That's a very good one. To be honest, I think I'd probably rather we had somebody local. I'm a big fan of Deacon Blue, and I would love to see Deacon Blue because I know one of their number is obviously a big fan as well of the club. So I think that would be quite special for him as well. Dougie Vipon, who I know. So yeah, I think Deacon Blue would be good enough for me. Not quite worldwide fame, but yeah, they would put on a damn good show. I always go and see them when they're in Scotland.
Aye, well, mine's just sort of closer to home as well. I'd probably go for Texas if I had to pick. I've got to see Texas once. It's the first time I'd really ever heard of them, and I've got to say I was really impressed with them. I was amazed that actually they sort of became my favourite recently. But there's no mistake. I mean, Oasis would just be amazing. Can you imagine Liam Gallagher rocking up to the Smicer Stadium on a Saturday for a half-time performance? I mean, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think we need to leave all the doors open. It would be overwhelmed for sure. Yeah.
But no, John, thank you so much again for coming on.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I just looking at the clock there, I can't believe it's an hour nearly. So, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks very much for having me on. And it's very much part of my role to engage with fans and podcasts and stuff like that. And it's been very enjoyable. So thank you, and thanks for your support, and thanks to everyone who listens in for their support as well. It's much appreciated.
No, absolutely no problem at all. Where can people find you if they have any questions? I know you've said before you're very open and honest, and you like to have a conversation with anybody. So if anybody did have any questions, where could they find you at?
Well, probably easiest is just email me at john.needham@stmirren.com. That's probably the easiest one to remember. I'm always willing to engage with fans who've either got questions or suggestions on things we should do, or quite often get, why do we not do X, Y, or Z? And sometimes within that there's some real gems of ideas. There's a couple of things had been raised with me at the Smizer meeting last week that I was picking up with Keith today as well. So we need to think about every possibility for improving the club or improving the way we do things. And so if anybody's got any questions, or just buttonhole me, I'm in and around the stadium obviously on match days as well, and I'm through in Paisley every week also. So during the week, so I'm happy to speak to people, meet up with people, or whatever. I think it's really important to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's all from us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, comment your thoughts on the interview, comment any questions you have, and I'll try my best to answer them. But once again, John, it's been such a pleasure, and who knows, we can do this again in the future, hopefully when we maybe win a cup or win the Conference League when we get inevitably back into it.
Yeah, well, that would be fantastic, absolutely. So, yeah, thanks a lot.
Not a
All the
problem.
best.
Yeah, thank you, you too, and we'll see you guys in the next